we're here, it's usually Monday.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's been a nonstop week. That's 21 days.
I know that feeling. You ready for us to go? Okay. All right, I will call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Mr. Moore. Ms. Cribbs is out today, so welcome to your first
Thank you.
lead,
My first
leadership.
official.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, welcome. Okay, so I do not see any public comments, so we'll move into our agenda. And our first item is a presentation on all things technology. So we'll welcome Mr. Garib up to the table and get going. Come on.
I'm actually gonna. Okay. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Sorry while I connect here a second. Okay. I wanted to take some time this afternoon and give you an overview of GRPS's technology and kind of where the especially finance part of it fits in. And so I'll just go through a few slides. I know I do tend to talk quickly when I start talking tech, so feel free to hit the brakes if I get going too quickly on us. So there are two general areas that technology falls into at GRPS, administrative technology and instructional technology. And this slide reviews it's not exhaustive, but it reviews at a 10,000-foot view a lot of the administrative technologies that we support in the district. And I'll just briefly go through them. Everything from wired and wireless networks in all buildings district-wide, includes our fiber between all of our sites, between our partner organizations, connections to our partner organizations, internet connectivity for all of our stakeholders, again, including all of our schools as well as all of our partners, staff computing devices, email and collaboration systems, storage, both cloud and local storage for everything from individualized storage for our staff to shared storage for groups of staff, for us and partners, far-reaching for that stuff. Two of our business critical systems, our student information system and our ERP system, our financial system, the Business Plus system. Those are both housed on-prem, so we have a data center that's on this campus, and those are not cloud-based systems, they're on-prem systems, so we manage all the facets of those. There are some security implications to that helps us be able to identify and control those security issues a little bit more closely, but they're yet still available to folks, whether they're at home or whether at work, what have you. Phones and call centers, we've got several thousand phones, and we also run 4 call centers in the district, including at the Transportation Center, Community and Student Services, Student Data Systems, and our own help desk. Access control systems, which is everything from card swipes at doors to video doorbells for parents and stakeholders to enter our school buildings, door releases, things of that nature, burglar and fire alarm systems, surveillance and safety systems. So we've got about 1,000 security cameras district-wide that are network-based. And then in addition, we've got a bunch of analog cameras that are kind of old style, older than 7 years old analog, that are also now, instead of upgrading them, I shouldn't say instead of, in lieu of upgrading them, we've connected them to the network as they kind of wait for their turn to have a full upgrade. We also have safety systems connected to the network. That includes things like fire suppression systems, smoke detectors. I don't know where all the AEDs are in the district, but the network does, because they're all connected to the network so that they can, they check in, they phone home, we know that they are healthy and working, we know that they've been deployed, things of that nature. Bells and paging systems, these have traditionally been the purview of our facilities department. If you think about the old school bell systems and overhead paging, those have transitioned slowly and we've still got a lot of work to do in this area to network board systems. And so we get to take advantage of interoperational connections with other systems. We can have more granular control over a single speaker, and how bell times are managed can be done right in a school building with drag and drop through a web interface. So some of those things we get to take advantage of with newer systems. We still have a bunch of paper, so there's print copy fax systems still in place throughout the district that we maintain. Energy management systems, anything that heats, cools, or lights a building, generally we're connected to. And then power systems. So now that we've got all these systems network connected, they also can gain their power from the network rather than from individual outlets placed throughout the facilities. And the good news there is that that allows us to have emergency backup systems in place that will power all of those systems without having to have a bunch of little emergency connections throughout the building. It also does mean, though, that when we then have to crank up our infrastructure power, so all of those devices that go back to the network then has to be able to maintain its power and power outages for a certain period of time. Obviously, we want to be able to run phones and a bunch of devices in the event of an unforeseen power outage. AV systems, we have digital signs both out at the street side as well as in our school buildings. We also have conferencing systems, and then we have some mobile event systems. I know you guys have seen us take to when we've even had board meetings at remote locations, things of that nature. We have a whole slew of firewall intrusion prevention and VPN systems. I tried to figure out how to make this more than one bullet. There's just so much here, but this is really our cybersecurity suite of tools. And then administrative support systems. So there are, at last count, about 250 administrative support systems. I mean, if you think about everything from Zoom to Canva to anything that is a web browser that you use during your course of business throughout the day. And then moving on to instructional technology, staff and student scholar computing devices, obviously our instructional technology. Internet connectivity for families, you guys are probably aware we offer both hotspots for families who don't have good internet at home, as well as the ability to get home internet that GRPS will cover the bill for. And that's done through the Comcast Internet Essentials program that we've been doing since 2020, and we continue to do that now. Learning management systems, so our two big learning management systems are Schoology for our secondary students and Seesaw for elementary. And again, these allow teachers to post homework online and parents to track their students' progress and that sort of thing. Classroom technology systems, that's the stuff that's in each classroom that generally looks like interactive whiteboard coupled with a projector, along with the document camera, audio enhancement system, wireless projection like we're doing here tonight. Filtering and monitoring compliance systems, so we do filter and monitor, obviously. We have both SIPA, which is Children's Internet Protection Act, federal requirements for that, but then we also have some policies that are board policy and that GRPS institutes for all student devices. And in fact, we institute them all for all network-connected devices, whether you're a student or a staff member.
Children what? You said it so quickly.
I'm sorry, Children's Internet Protection Act. It's a federal statute that defines how students should be protected from inappropriate material online. Then we have some content-specific technology. So our STEM labs have 3D printers. Special education has some special devices as the needs arise for students, and then fine arts has some specialized devices as well. I think about music production labs and some of our art programming that has some special devices as well. And then of course we have a whole slew of testing systems related to both our assessments as well as state and college testing that's done throughout the course of the year. I've listed a few there. And then core curriculum and support tools. Again, this is a little bullet on this page, but a gigantic bullet in terms of, excuse me, our supports district-wide for all of the, not just core curriculum, but Tier 2 curriculum and all of the other support mechanisms that are used in instruction every day. So all of that amounts to about 70 plus connected facilities, buildings throughout the district, and about 45,000 devices on our network, supporting our 15,000 scholars and 2,500 staff, and I have 15,000 there because we are supporting some students that are our partners as well. So for example, we partner with Covenant House Academy to support their infrastructure as well, and so we're supporting their students as well. And our staff of 17 technicians and 2 instructional technologists are the groups who are the staff who manage those devices. So where do we get funding for all this stuff? There's kind of three buckets there. One is E-rate, which is a federal program, used to be called Universal Service Fund. This program was instituted in 1996, and its goal was to provide for really network and internet connectivity to every classroom in the US. And so the eligible components of that, the eligible services are internet connectivity itself, and then all of the transports that get it down to that last mile to the student. So it doesn't cover things like student devices or staff devices. It doesn't cover projectors and things like that. It does kind of cover the internet. It covers the network gear, covers the cabling to get it there, covers the wireless access points, things like that that delivers the internet to all of our classrooms. That's a 16-month window, that funding window. So usually we will start around November determining what services and materials that are eligible, that are going to be needed for the upcoming 16-month window. And this is a really tough crystal ball. I mean, crystal balling technology is tough to begin with, but it's a 16-month window that starts July and goes through the following September, but we really have to start the planning the November before that. So we're into a 2+ year window, and we've got to not only assess what our needs are going to look like 2 years down the line, but exactly what the parts and pieces are going to be, because the application requires a lot of specificity, and you don't get opportunities to change that, unfortunately, throughout the window. This year is a perfect year where we're a little on edge with where we do our planning, because we know facilities master plan is going to change what our facilities look like and what our infrastructure looks like. And so we're hopeful that the timing is going to work out for us, where after we pass the bond, we'll know more about exactly what facilities planning will take place the next 24 months, and then be able to plan appropriately for our upcoming filing. That's about a $750,000 to $3 million allocation yearly, and we've been successful all 26 years so far that we've applied for it, and that's been a boon in terms of us being able to keep our internet connectivity high and our bandwidth high for all of our students and staff.
Is $3 million the cap of what
It's
they'll fund?
not. No,
Okay.
that's the estimate of the range that we generally hit. We've actually in some of the earlier years when we were doing very large projects and there was less of a cap from the federal programming, we went over that. There is a budget for what's considered Category 2 services. There's two, not to get off the topic, but there's Category 1 and Category 2. Category 1 is delivery of things like internet service. Category 2 is the equipment that allows that service to get where it needs to go. Category 1 doesn't have a cap on it. Category 2 does, and it used to be on a building-by-building basis based on the number of students who were eligible for free and reduced lunch in that building. Gets complicated quick,
Yes.
right? In the last few years, the USAC, the governing body that manages the E-rate, has heard from many districts like ours who've said, that cap doesn't make sense for us. Let's look at the cap from a district percentage. How many students do we have free and reduced throughout the district who are eligible, and let's do the cap on that. And so they've started doing that now. The 85% to 90% coverage, that has to do with the Category 1, Category 2. Category 1 services are 90% eligible, so for every $100 we spend, we get $90 of it back, and the Category 2 stuff is 85% eligible. Then we have grant and special funding sources. Most notably recently is our ESSER grant, of course. Also the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which was instituted not long after COVID, that we took advantage of to provide hotspots and devices to students. But there's many others that are also grant funded, so things like even Title I funding, where that's spent on technology components, would be an example. And then lastly is Board of Education. So between MIS budget, which is budgeted for district-wide services, things that affect all of our schools primarily, and then the individual program budgets, where an individual program wants to do something specific with technology needs that in their building that may be different than another school building. So refreshing all of this stuff is a constant job. And so this is a general review of how we try to target those refreshes. So for individual computing devices, we try to keep them on a 3 to 5 year cycle. Classroom technology equipment, the projectors and things that keep the teachers going at the front of their classroom, we try to put on a 5 to 10 year cycle. And then infrastructure equipment is generally 7+ years. And that really varies because there's such a broad array of infrastructure equipment. But most of it has much more longevity than the device that we all sit in front of every day. So the timeline in the most recent past, so in 2017, after the 2015 bond, we initially, and I'm looking at the top line now, the staff devices, we initially provided new teacher devices. And then did upgraded teacher devices. So essentially we said, okay, 2017, 2020, we're getting right about that 3 to 5 year sweet spot, and it was at the right moment for some gear funding for us to be able to upgrade our staff devices, and so we did that in December of 2020. And then if we look at tonight's finance agenda, we'll find that this additional teacher and instructional support expense is the one that is on tonight's agenda. There were purchases in the middle. There have been a bunch of little purchases that aren't shown here because we've had all kinds of things happen, from hiring a bunch of a staff for specific programs, such as our neighborhood, Promise Neighborhood staff, as well as, I know that one was on the agenda recently, as well as filling much needed long-term sub and teacher positions in the district. So the good news is that we've been filling some of those positions, and as I talked to HR, we're still going, and that's great, but it also does require us to have some additional devices. Our plan is that in June of 2024, we're going to ask you to do that refresh again for all staff. So those folks who would have a 2020 device still by June of 2024, we have budgeted part of our ESSER funds to be able to refresh devices for staff kind of right at the tail end of our ESSER spend. And then looking at the bottom line for scholar devices, we started in the fall of 2018 as we had started doing expenditures from our 2015 bond and provided devices to every classroom in the district. At the time, folks would say, are you a one-to-one district? And I would say, well, we have more devices than we have students, so technically we're a 1.3 to 1. But yeah, so that was where we had kind of started with the full influx of student devices. And then along the way, we have used emergency connectivity funds, ECF, and ESSER funds to try to do replacements on sectors of those devices as we've gone along. Since 2020, our loss and damage rate just has gone up a lot higher than it was prior to 2020, and so there have been some small incremental upgrades as well in between these, but these are kind of the big chunks. So you can see we did about 30% of all student devices starting in October 2020, another 40% in August of 21. We did another 10% in April of 22. And so there's a bunch of chunks here where we did those, and then in February of 23, last February, we added a bunch of devices specifically for assessment. We knew digital SAT was coming. SAT is now digital only. There's not a paper pencil option for that. So starting this fall, those who take the NMSTT or the PSAT, and in the spring, the SAT, it'll all be digital. And so we wanted to be ready for that as well. In July of 2023, we did one more replacement of 10%, and now our hope is that and this is what's on tonight's finance agenda, is this block of orange here is throughout the course of this school year, we want to do another up to 30% replacement. And then our last ESSER expense will be at the end of the school year when we try to get the last 50%. And then that will hopefully set us up, because we know without ESSER dollars, we don't have big chunks of dollars in sight. And so between that and bond, be able to continue the cycle of keeping our students with current devices. Refresh planning for classroom technology. Classroom technology was initially implemented not long after the 2004 bond. We didn't really have a classroom technology package prior to that 2004 bond, and so we kind of defined it along with that proposal. And so after that was passed, then we did all of our buildings in a whirlwind in a few years after that, so 2005 to 2008. You can see there was a large gap after 2008 where we didn't do a lot of classroom technology. We did do some out of Title I funding. We did do some nickels and dimes here and there. We did do a lot of duct tape and rubber bands to keep things together. As we started to do new building renovations as part of the 2015 bond, as you can see here, Frost Middle High, Ridgemore, Buchanan, Museum, these were all bond projects where we said, okay, this is the time for us to either upgrade if it was a building that was undergoing renovation, or implement new if it was a new construction, obviously. As we got through the bond expenditures, then we were finding some of those 2005, 2008 systems were really, really, really old, where we had done a lot of patches, new projectors, but not new document cameras, no new wiring, old projection screens, all that stuff. And so we had identified that as a need for our ESSER spend as well. And so starting back in the spring, we started implementing classroom technology upgrades for all rooms that hadn't gotten a new one since the 2005 bond, or 2004 bond. And so we're due to wrap up the last of our classrooms. We're doing it in 2 phases, so we're doing all of our classrooms proper, We want to get in there first so that all of our instructors were standing in front of new tech, and we expect to have that done around December. And then phase 2 is actually concurrently running. It's already running and will run through the end of this school year, and that's instructional support spaces like gymnasiums and auditoriums, conference rooms, spaces like those. And then lastly is the infrastructure equipment project. So our crystal ball for that has a lot to do with how we plan for our E-rate spend, but also what back-end stuff needs to happen. What's that administrative technology? What's the infrastructure part? So we know we're going to have network equipment upgrades, not the least of which would be because of facilities changes and moves, as well as access control system upgrades. We're looking to enhance access control systems, which those are well beyond the 7+ year age, and we want to be able to take advantage of feature enhancements, and that technology is end of life as well, which is why it says EOL tech here. That's the end of life tech that we can continue to run, but we don't get to take the benefits of, do we get to connect it to new systems? Do we get to take advantage of cool features? Do we get to connect it to whatever new thing's going to come down the line tomorrow? Paging and bell system upgrades, as I mentioned, we had started doing that, changing it from a just strictly old school facility, speakers with cable that goes back to a network system, and we're going to continue to do that. And then digital signage expansion as well. So more of that, and that's, from a school by school basis, schools have opted to take advantage of that in a lot of different ways, and we see some, I think of a couple middle schools who are doing digital signage in hallways. It's not, we think of digital signage more of marketing, right? Okay, someone comes into a building, what's going on today? What's the announcements? We have a middle school now that wants to do, I want to do a countdown clock on my digital signs when it's passing period, so kids are on time to their classes, and just kind of some kind of out of the box thinking that we didn't have back when we were all in school. Okay, that was a lot of information.
Committee members, any questions?
Yeah, can you go back to the refresh planning slide, the first one?
Sure.
So I'm gonna get to that one, but
Okay.
you mentioned earlier about providing Wi-Fi to some of our students from that need it as those who can't or don't.
Home internet access.
Correct.
Okay.
What are those devices outdated? Are they on 5G at the home? Like, are we having complaints about those when it comes to students and their ability to stay current or respond quickly due to that we now have new technology? I'm curious to know, like, what are those devices that they had? Because I'm assuming based off of your aforementioned comment regarding that some of those devices were heightened and put out during the stay at home for COVID, it made me wonder, that's now 3 years old, so I'm wondering, is this the same devices or have those been swapped out for students? Like, can you expand upon that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right, it was during COVID when we really initiated that program, and they were, at the time, the 4G ELT hotspots. So at the time they were current, and the speeds were good, and the caps were very high on them so that they could be used by multiple students in a household. And we issued 1,500 or so of those to our students district-wide throughout 2020, 2021. We require all those devices to come back at the end of the school year, just like we do all of our other Scholar devices. And as of the end of last school year, we had fewer than 180 households that were actively using those. And so we've slowly turned things off, obviously, as devices are no longer in use. But at the same time, it made sense for us to look at upgrades for those. So we have started doing upgrades already on those with new devices. Our intent is just to flip those 180 or so devices with some additional devices for families that may come forward this year and say, I need assistance. The 4G LTE with the caps that they're on are still adequate for what students are doing at home, for sure. We see some pretty high numbers sometimes, and we know that it's easy to take advantage of a hotspot for as many devices as can connect to it at home, and so that's good. I mean, that we're seeing the usage on them. The new devices will provide for 5G speeds. Not all locations have access to 5G coverage, obviously, but as that comes along, then the devices will be there and the speeds will be there as well.
Is this already something that has been solicited out of a different budget already, or is that something that's coming forth before? Because if you've already been switching them out, I'm assuming. I haven't.
Yeah, so there hasn't been So if you look at our Verizon blanket that we renewed at the end of the fiscal year, it really covered for the services that cover those devices, and then the equipment is, because it's so low value, it doesn't actually come to finance for approval.
Okay. And I continue.
Please, yeah, by all means, yeah.
I was. Um, so you talked about grants in one of those other slides too. I don't want you to leave from this one, but you don't have to.
That's okay. All right.
And I guess I was curious to know, is that somebody in your department that manages those grants, or is it something that the district is managing for you? And if so, that's one. The part two of that is, do we have any current grants out that's seeking for any of these upgraded technology features that doesn't require and I'm not saying this in a bad way, the financial burden of the district to carry, but perhaps there's some aid out there that is able to help assist the lift of the burden of the technology increase that's happening across the nation?
Sure, absolutely. So, so grants that are specifically technology generally are handled by MIS, by my department. And so E-rate is an example of that. We manage that grant pretty much end to end with the assistance of the Business Services Office. And then, so our filing for that, you know, we do the assessment and the submission and all of the applications, all of the things related to that grant end to end every year. For grants that aren't strictly technology, and most aren't actually, everything from Title I to ESSER to what have you, are managed usually by either a regulatory authority that's at GRPS. So, you know, we have a Title I administrator, for example. For ESSER and ECF, it's been our business office. And so then they would manage that, and then we would get looped in for determining what made sense from a budget and eligibility perspective, and then just all the moving parts of how we apply. I'm not sure I answered all of your question there, Mr. Eatman. Did I?
Literally just turned off the power. So like didn't realize my foot did that. And I think I just killed my computer. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But so are we currently seeking grants, technology grants? Are there some that are in the pipeline?
So there aren't any in the pipeline other than those that I've mentioned right now. We are always looking for new grants. Our department seeks out technology grants. Not specifically ones that aren't technology, but we have from time to time latched onto those that we know would be a good technology fit. And I think of, you know, as we've worked with the Safety and Security Office related to grants that they have been interested in and have procured, where there's a huge portion of technology in them, whether it's surveillance cameras or access control or what have you.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I remember, and I know I traveled for a couple, so I didn't see this come through. And I remember last time we talked first, before I even continue, thank you for even doing the presentation. That's what I should have started off with, so I do apologize.
My pleasure.
From that. So it was very thorough. It did answer a lot of gaps for me. But then also it raised another question for me, right? And so the question would have been around, sometimes you cannot read your own handwriting. How do we get an update? So I wanted this one because I remember the last time I think I had you here where you graced us with your presence. Let me rephrase that. We talked about, I brought up the aspect of us having, like there were so many other things that kept coming for us around very similar grouped together equipment.
Sure.
And I remember also requesting if there was, as that came up, could we have a form of a breakdown of what have we purchased thus far for what schools got those, and then what's the remaining things that might be coming forth for that. I want to make sure we're being good stewards, right, of what we're being asked to manage. And so can we have that?
Yeah, I believe I understand your question correctly, and yes, absolutely. And for point of clarification, as you know, I submit items for our finance agenda. So if we look, for example, on today's agenda and several past agendas, it'll mention purchase of new devices for students grade 2 through 12 throughout the district. And so we, since 2020, have not purchased devices except for special needs, things that are kind of out of the box. We haven't purchased devices specifically for a school. So when we purchase student devices, we purchase them for all 2 through 12th graders. And then our staff maintains the quantity of devices required for each school. So when we brought it to you and said, hey, we need 500 devices, it's because we've looked at the needs district-wide and said, okay, what are the totals look like? What's the forecast look like? So we know this is what will set us up so that we can continue to provide devices across the board for 2 through 12, or pre-K through 1, or whatever the case may be. There have been scenarios where we've also submitted things and I think our infrastructure item tonight says infrastructure equipment for, and then it lists schools out. Okay, so these are where we've identified, for whatever reason, whether it be because their equipment is the oldest, or we've got specific grant funding to cover them, or whatever. And so I guess I'm just saying we endeavor to put that detail in there to cover it. But since 2020, our student and staff devices, we've really tried to keep just a level playing field from pre-K through 12 and said, we're going to make sure that we keep the quantities up where they need to be at all grade levels in all schools.
So I'm not sure if you even realize you said this, and this is a good thing, and I want to say this to you on record. The aspect of you acknowledging the aspect that something is district-wide and needed talks about an equitable approach. And I don't want you to gloss over that, because that's really important to highlight that you're looking at. Is this what schools are having old infrastructure, what student devices or teacher devices are not up to date that's helping to improve the quality of education that our scholars receive and that they're able to give. I think that's not something you should just not highlight, because it does speak to what us as a collective board has been talking about, that equitable approach, and being intentional about what we're doing with that. And so if there is a way for you to talk about that more, and I'm just not talking about here, but in any form of way, I really would encourage you to do that, because it does talk about the district's intentionality behind those efforts, and especially access to technology when we know there's a real digital divide in our communities that we serve. And so to not highlight that digital divide, or to not highlight our efforts to decrease that digital divide, doesn't do us any service, but it also doesn't highlight you in the best way. So I really want to encourage that you continue to talk about that, because I think that is something to not skate over. I think that's really something to be intentional, proud about, that we are doing those measures to make sure that, and I don't know if the term "no child left behind," but I really hate that, because it took a different, other people kind of capitalize on that in a negative way. But saying that we really are trying to make sure that we have all of our scholars are equipped to be the best version of them, to have the best educational access for them, and I think that's something to highlight. And so I just wanted to drop a little note for you there.
That point's well taken. I know sometimes it's easy for us from a tech perspective to go, okay, where's the oldest tech? Where's the most needed, and to just automatically think in those terms. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, that highlights exactly the disparities that hopefully we're closing the gaps on.
So toot your horn.
Got it.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Great questions. Any others?
I came in halfway through, so I have questions, but maybe they weren't answered. So if they were, I'll just look back at our video. But well, thank you for being here, and I apologize for my tardiness. But a question I had about this slide in particular is the one-to-one scholar devices. So you did mention it in your presentation that, of course, as we run out of ESSER funds, and we do have the bond proposal, crossing my fingers, right, that passes, but the well is drying up, so to speak, on the funds that we can pull from to revitalize our devices. Do you have any other ideas, any maybe, I guess, kind of backup plans as to how we're going to handle our, let's say that we continue on replacing them as we have, but we don't have more funding? I guess, what do we do then in terms of, yeah.
No, and that's a great question, because that's, especially with, you think about I've said here a 3 to 5 year device refresh on devices, and most of us, if we were to think about how long we keep a device, it's probably not much longer than that either.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are options related to how we provide scholar devices and how we manage the learning that goes on them. And our not MIS, but all of GRPS team has dealt with that even prior to 2018, when we started implementing bond level devices where we had enough devices to be able to say, yes, every scholar could have a device in their hands at any point. So I think that there's going to be some hard thinking about that as we look forward beyond ESSER funding and possibly even beyond bond funding. At some point in our lives, right, we're going to have to deal with this. And that's everything from providing student devices that maybe are in more of a hybrid model. That word has really changed since 2020, hasn't it?
Yeah.
where maybe they don't go home with a student every day.
Right.
And that helps us maintain a better quality of our fleet, and so it lasts longer. Maybe it's a different device selection, so that rather than paying for a $500 device, which we think is great, hits the target perfectly, we say, okay, we can get the job done with a device that maybe isn't quite as expensive, but still would be able to maintain the level of what we want to do instructionally, curriculum tool-wise, and still allow a student to take the device home and do homework and all the things that we want them to do. I think there's hard conversations as we look at the inability to just fund having enough devices to go around and keeping the break-fix stuff fixed.
Right.
So there's no silver bullet there, and my peers throughout the state are they face the same things all the time, and I don't think anybody's figured it out perfectly yet.
And then kind of to the right where you ended off with the, having worked in GRPS myself, I've seen so many devices, get, cracked, broken, right? Liquid gets spilled on them. What do we have? I guess I'm not too familiar with, what happens with the, do we have a insurance plan that parents can purchase? Do we have insurance on all our devices ourselves? How does that work?
Yeah, so, and I think that's an area where, as I talk about those tough decisions, where that would be for sure a factor of a point of discussion. So today, we don't have insurance we don't require parents to pay for insurance. Some districts do that. They'll say $50 up front for the school year, or whatever the case may be. Or when you break a device, you have to pay a deductible. We don't do that, and we haven't done that since 2018. So that may be an area where, okay, we've had the luxury of not having to do that, and there've been parents who have come to principals and said, I'm really sorry this happened. Tell me what I need to do to pay for the device. We'll take care of it, what have you. Being able to be in a position where we are purchasing warranties and drop break warranties with all of our devices right now, that may not be something we do forever. That might be something that is going to have to go along the wayside in order for us to continue to maintain the refresh. And then we'd have to find better solutions to keep the fleet up then.
All right, thank you so much.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Yeah, very, very helpful and informative. I'm, of course, remembering the days before ESSER funds, and you can certainly see those gaps in the timeline there. So I know as I met with Ms. Cribbs ahead of tonight's meeting, we were talking about how might we prepare, right, for the future, and so that's what you're going to see moving forward on the purchasing agenda tonight is preparing for the future. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, please. Yeah, one more question.
I did have one more question for you.
Tasha, can you?
I have one more question.
Sorry, yeah.
So I remember, and I laughed at this, and I think I laughed at this with Shaki, and I think, Trustee Shaki and Trustee Rodriguez. My apologies for the familiarity. And I remember when we had a power outage or something, and they were like, we got to get out the old school projectors, with the film paper. And you triggered a memory, and I was like, I cannot wait to ask you these questions. Are we moving forward with not bringing back 1970 devices for our classrooms, especially for films that don't have that? Is that something that is being transitioned out, as you talked about some of those smart boards?
Sure.
And those smart whiteboards, which are kind of state of the art right now, and a lot of universities and high schools are using them, especially when I think about other districts locally that are using that and that kind of chuckled, and I thought it was a joke until I was like, oh no, they were serious about that, and that need for us to be able to upgrade some of those systems so we don't have students that are, some students don't even know
overhead projector is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like some of these things I'm like, oh, I keep forgetting. This is the iPhone generation. Like, there's certain things, and so when I think about that, are we transitioning to updating our equipment where that is now obsolete?
Yeah, so and that the Classroom Technology Initiative is all about that. So when we did the initial one with the 2004 bond, we went through and pulled out all the overhead projectors, and even in 2004-05, there were a few teachers who said over my dead body, but
Yes.
and so we replaced them with projectors, like the one in this classroom. Projection screens and projectors, more of a traditional what was at the time was a more of a cutting edge technology. That now with the new classroom tech upgrade that we're wrapping up here in December, it'll all be, instead of projection screens, it'll all be interactive whiteboards. It'll be laser projectors that no longer have lamps in them, so that you don't have a lamp that burns out and you have to replace it. And so we're trying to continue to push the envelope on that. We actually have a cross-sectional group of staff that, I'll be honest with you, hasn't met since COVID, but this is going to be the first year that they meet again, and it will be we always get this group together every 3 to 5 years to do the what's next. Okay, so we've got the laser projectors, we've got the interactive whiteboards, we've got the audio enhancement systems, we've got wireless projection. What else? What new tech makes sense to go in the classroom as a tool for the instructor, for the students to be able to just streamline that and to stay, frankly, up with the new tech. And that group was the same group that made the recommendations for what really today is our classroom technology system.
Is it safe to, and thank you for that, is it safe to?
I was
Go
going to say,
ahead.
and
No,
if it helps, I also, whenever I see an overhead projector, I put it in the back of my car and take it out. So
Thank you for that, and use it as, take it to the smash shop or whatever that thing
Oh,
is,
that's
so
right.
people could.
Yeah.
We actually
we
had
recycle.
some,
Yeah.
we actually had some really cool technology put in during COVID too. Like I'm thinking of the cameras where the
Yep.
teachers were
For the
teaching.
owl cameras.
Yeah, when we were doing hybrid and there were students at home and students in the classroom. Yeah, so there were a bunch of tech that was kind of specific to that window that we don't use as much now, but certainly was a boon then. So, yeah.
And my last thing for you is, I would love for you to be able to come back to this particular committee and talk about how GRPS overall is utilizing or getting ahead or anticipating the growth of AI and how AI will be integrated within our systems. I think that will be something we cannot be laxed on since everything is moving that way. And so I would definitely like to know where our IT, as you being ahead of that, is headed with that technology, and how might that be something that the district embraces in its various different capacities.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
really like to know about that.
I'd be happy.
So
to
we
do
are
that.
not behind the ball, we're staying on top of it.
Right, yeah, absolutely. If it helps, one of the, just to give you a teaser for that, earlier this year, we asked you to approve upgrades of our firewalls district-wide, and these are the firewalls that protect all devices that are within the GRPS walls. And those devices have specifically cybersecurity AI components built into them because it's not enough now for us to know what kinds of things the bad guys are doing. We have to have someone, or in this case maybe something, imagine what that might be. And so when you see certain behaviors, and when I say you, I mean the firewall's AI see certain behaviors, it can go, this looks suspect. Whether I block it or not, at least I'm notifying a human being to say, take a look at this because this looks suspect. And so taking advantage of that stuff, I know that in cybersecurity, it's already started to be a huge thing, and we expect to see more of that in the coming years.
And malware, because I know our students have district emails to a certain degree, and so what I've been seeing now of an uptake because of my actual profession, there's been a lot of hacking into major, larger systems through email, and so I'm hoping that either our scholars are getting some form of training or there's a phishing alert that they can actually be trained to help us with catching those things, to push that forward, so that way we are actually using all methods to protect the district in a database system. I'm hoping that is something, if you aren't considering to do, and bring that forward.
I wish I had the slide for you, but there's a chart that shows the number of attacks suffered by K-12 throughout the U.S. In the last 5 years. And we have a chart that's specific to GRPS that has our data on it. And the chart, it's kind of low, and then 2020, and then all of a sudden it goes like this for K-12. And I look at that every day. This morning at 10:30, I think I looked at it, there had been over 9,000 attacks on GRPS today. And you know that it's that, and so we put the systems in place to try to protect it, but it's always trying to stay ahead of this target,
Yeah.
right? So, and the AI components help us with that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Fascinating. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move forward to our action items and welcome Mr. Moore again to lead us through our purchasing agenda. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Okay, first items on there, under the general fund, instructional supplies, equipment, and services. Utilization of private contractor to provide meal support staff working collaboratively with GRPS Food Nutrition Services Department. Staff during meal times for the 23-24 school year, total cost of $1.4 million. The vendor's West Michigan Janitorial. The second item under that category is permission to modify blanket order for academic enrichment instructional services for grades 1 through 3 for the school year 23-24 at a cost of $6,500. The original blanket order amount was $45,000. It was approved in June. The new blanket order would be for $51,500. This is for the Blandford Nature Center. Do you want me to go through the entire purchase agenda for questions afterwards, or pause at each?
Why don't we pause at each? I think that's helpful. Any questions about those two items under general fund? Okay, we'll move
No,
forward.
I think we kind of anticipated that from the last time when it because of lack of staffing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, under support materials and services, lease cost of a replacement printer for Southwest Elementary School Academia Bilingual for a 5-year period at a cost of $3,972 per year. Again, that was for a 5-year period under Applied Innovation. Permission to reallocate an existing blanket by $180,000 for Robert Half International, and to allocate those dollars in addition to adding $320,000 to the blanket for temporary employee services, primarily for administrative employees for the 23-24 school year at a total cost of $525,000.
I do have a question about that, and maybe it's not something that we can cover here, but so I guess I don't know if you could clarify what administrative employees kind of covers in that $525,000, if you have any of that information.
Okay, first off, I'll do a disclosure that I was handed this morning.
Yeah, no, I
So-
totally
so-
understand it. That's why,
Great.
So,
Yeah,
so
don't
some of
worry.
this we might have to come back to. That would honestly be a better question for human resources
Sure.
Yeah.
as to what the open positions are,
Right.
what they're having trouble filling, and where the temporary
Okay.
contract positions
Um,
would be
Like, we pull it out.
would be best
Yeah.
filled.
And I was going to ask, could I make a motion to pull that from the purchasing agenda for now to maybe discuss at a later date?
We can, so let's talk about it for a minute, because I
Okay.
think what we could also do is approve it, but request additional information, and then,
At our general board meeting?
right, and then at the general board meeting, if you felt like we needed to pull it out, we could. So we wouldn't slow the district down, so it
Yeah.
doesn't have to wait a month, right?
Right,
If that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. So that's one we'd like more clarification
Okay.
on.
So
So we'll get more info at the meeting on.
Should
Or
we be-
between now and then, yeah, so that you have what you need in order to be able to
Do you
vote.
Well-
want us to be specific with what, so that way they're not running around?
Definitely, yeah. So we're asking specifically to clarify what administrative employee, what definition of administrative employee, or which roles fall under that, right?
And then Robert Half International Inc. So there's is there two different vendors under this?
So
Or
I
what is
did-
that?
What I know about this in talking to Ms. Cribbs ahead of time is that our Human Resources Department has asked us to change temporary staffing organizations from Robert Half to mixed staffing and recruiting. So we're ending that relationship and then moving that existing blanket over to a new provider. So all temporary
okay.
services will be provided through mixed staffing and recruiting.
Okay.
Are we losing money as a result of that switch?
I don't know, I can't
Okay.
answer that. I don't believe so, but we can ask that clarifying question too.
And I was just going to ask, is Ms. Cribbs just not available today? Is she on vacation? I don't know.
Out ill,
Oh, okay.
Mhm,
All right. So
yeah.
she won't be gone too long, so we can reach out to her.
I don't think so, yeah.
Let's hope not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's not the plan, yes.
COVID, 2 weeks, and then,
I don't know that.
Well, listen,
She went home 6.
we're not doing any HIPAA violations here, so, you know, she's out.
That's right.
She'll come back.
Thank you very much,
They
Mr.
answered
Eatman.
Regardless. through
That's
human
right.
resources.
That's right.
All
Okay.
right. I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We will move on to stock
So to clarify,
inventory.
what positions or specific types of positions?
Yep.
And is there a cost impact by changing vendors?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next section is stock inventory, looking to purchase copy paper to be utilized throughout the district, total cost of $83,160 from Central Michigan Paper. Second one, purchase of paper products, paper towels, toilet paper, facial tissues to be utilized throughout the district for the 23-24 school year, total cost of $94,957. Vendors Action Chemical Company.
Hoping that's some good quality apply for our scholars there, because that seems a little underpriced for some. Was that 2-ply? What is it? It's like, I want to make sure we're not scratching noses and skin off.
I was gonna say, I don't mind spending in that area too, so we gotta,
My goodness.
I was gonna say, do you want to know the cost savings there too?
I think it's too much cost savings for that one, perhaps. No, just joking.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right, we're moving on then to special funds. And so we're going to see a lot of those technology purchases preparing for the future here. And away you
Yes.
go.
One thing I'd wanted to just add real quick from Mr. Rodriguez's question about funding sources going forward, and when we're talking about the ESSER funds, and this was on the technology comment, is you hear Ms. Cribbs talk a lot about building up the fund balances.
right,
And so
right.
while technology may not be the specific largest impact in there, it's one of those factors that you talk about losing special funding for something, and then you look at these.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Part
she
of the why.
consistently, reminds us that she likes to be on the conservative
That's
side
right.
of numbers too, so
Yes.
that's great to hear too, so.
So that's one aspect of why she verbalizes that as we talk about
Right.
things that are going to need to be funded
Right,
by new sources.
absolutely. Thank you
Okay.
for that clarification as
Yes.
well.
Instructional supplies, equipment, and services. Purchase of additional teacher and long-term substitute computers for schools throughout the district at a total cost of $468,890. Funding source ESSER 3, vendor Insight Public Sector. Additional replacement storage and charging carts for student devices district-wide up to a total cost of $1,389,150. Funding ESSER 3, vendor CI Products. Approval to purchase additional replacement student devices for 2nd through 12th grade students district-wide up to a total cost of $1,754,236. ESSER 3, two vendors, Dell Presidio and Network Solutions Group LLC. Approval to purchase additional replacement student devices for PK through 1st grade. Students district-wide up to a total cost of $1,697,670. ESSER 3, vendor Apple. That's the primary of the technology. I don't know if we want to stop there for a minute.
Sure. I just was wondering if we could get some clarification for the storage and charging carts, because I feel like that's come up
We've done it twice.
a few times.
I'll phone a friend.
Thank you. Welcome back.
That, and I think last time when that came up, though, to your point, was we asked for specifics, like, so how Ms. Scribbs kind of gave a little bit more details, like, with what are we replacing, like, what are those devices that we're replacing for that, so it's not just a blanket, because it does make it seem repetitive, right? And it's just to help you, so we're not like, okay, we've seen this charging cart come up 3 times prior to. Is this at a
I know the
different
last time it
school?
was changing the
Yeah,
type
changing
of cart.
vendors.
Yeah.
It was a vendor change,
It
I
was a
think.
vendor change,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so in 2018, when we initially did student devices, we did carts for all those devices. Those carts are the same carts that we're still using today. So as we went through 2020, and we've gone through different models of student devices, scholar devices, that go into those carts. So the carts were built around those original devices. You slide them in, they start charging, all that stuff. Then these devices started to change, and now they don't slide in and snap. So we take them out, we redo them, and we still use them. And then the devices change a little bit again, and now we want to get more devices in because now we're more one-to-one and less just classroom sets. So needless to say, these carts have been through a lot. And now they're at the point where they no longer have built-in chargers. We still outfit them with chargers, but it's not as tidy and easy for staff to use. And many of the carts have been wheels repaired many, many times and doors repaired. And so the prior request and this request are just, they're the same equipment. We just started with the most needs in the last request, and now we're hoping to cover the remainder of those carts that need to be replaced now for the rest of the school year. So they're the same devices that you would have seen at the last request, just
So
many more.
do you anticipate this being the last ask for carts for the next year?
Yeah,
At
for this
least?
school year, yes.
Okay.
Can I expand upon your question?
Yeah.
Is that okay? So, if you could rewind and run that back for me just a little bit. So, I remember when we did talk about the switching over of those devices to different carts, we also talked about it was not just switching over, but also replacement. So, did some not get replaced or all that? Because I think that was a high dollar amount as well. So,
Yeah,
it just
so- Yeah, sorry.
seems like this is a duplicate. This is coming across for me like a duplicate
Yeah, it smells
request.
like a duplicate. Yeah, it does in the equipment that we're buying and the vendor we're buying from, but the prior purchase was 200 and I want to say 74 carts, and there's essentially a cart per classroom need, and so that's closer to 1,000 mark, and so then this is the complement to the 274 or 5. I forget what exactly the number was in that ask.
So this is when, just to reemphasize, this is what I was referring to when I wanted us to have like some form of a document, so that way we can be ensured that our exercise vote is accurate in that regards, because it does come off like this is repetitive, right? And so to me, it gives me a little caution to be like, okay, what is this actually going towards? Again, because this came forth prior to.
Yeah, the way that I'm experiencing it is we were in real time replacing our needs, and now we are looking at ESSER 3 coming up for needing to expend within the next year. And so we're saying, okay, now's the time for us to fill in the rest of the gap while we have the funding to be able to replace all carts in the district. So now it's just an add-on to the previous
So,
Okay.
replacement.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing you say, Mr. Eatman, is if at all possible, where it lists on the purchasing agenda, the vendor and the amount, almost like a gauge, like this is about 20% of what we would hope to fill.
Something that gives us an indicator of what it is, because so like for me, without this conversation happening, I would just be like, I would like to pull these out until we get more information, because it was stuff that we already asked for prior to, and I don't want to say yes to something that we are potentially not being aware of what's happening there. It just it settles not well with me.
It's nice to hear
Yeah.
the information of that was 200 and some carts. The district has this many, so
10,000.
ideally we would replace
Right.
the next 800 and this
Yeah,
year.
and that's a little bit on us, just in terms of, we try to be conservative as we do those things too. We don't go, okay, let's just replace all 1,000. Okay, well, let's see what the needs are today, and as we can turn those over, what remains. And we've done the same thing with staff and scholar devices as well, which is why we've done kind of a little bit along the way. But I understand completely what you're saying, and you're right. So that prior spend was about 30% of the total. This is, about 70%. I will say that, I said that this will be the end of carts for this year, and we expect that that's to be the case. We don't make it to 1,000 classrooms with this spend, but that's also because we're trying to do the fuzzy math of how many classrooms are we going to have to outfit this time next year, and
Yeah.
we're not positive what that looks like yet.
So it's never going to be exact,
No, right.
but if we could have a little bit of a
Absolutely.
gauge,
Just
it
a little bit
might,
more.
it might feel better.
Sure, and I'd be happy to include that, especially for future requests where, we're doing iterative
Yeah.
purchases
Yeah,
like
that's
this.
great.
You understand why, right? Because I'm looking at this, and this is about almost $4 million, or
Total.
This is,
yeah,
Technology, yeah.
about $4 million of the request that's coming from ESSER 3 now, which we did a close to about 2.5, something like that, with ESSER $2 around that. So I'm just looking at that from an aspect of being smart and responsible with these funds that we're approving on behalf of the district based on our seats here. And so that's where my caution comes in, just to be completely, I'm gonna be transparent as crap. So just to be transparent about that, it gives me a little caution.
And just going off of that, just the idea of being cautious with this money and spending it to the best of our abilities. You know, I hear the concerns about that, about seeing it looking like a duplicate, you know, expenditure. My thoughts on it, because it's, you know, almost $1.4 million. And so as we have, you know, one-to-one devices, we have chargers that students take home, you know, and bring back hopefully, right? I guess I'm wondering what what the real use is of charging cards. I know in elementary school, probably it's, you know, it's more, right? But as we get into middle and especially high school, I don't see it being used as much, right? So I'm wondering if that $1.4 million, you know, if that is entirely what we need for the amount that, I mean, that I've seen, right? And it could be a totally different reality of what is actually going on in classrooms, but in my middle school experience, I've hardly ever seen, you know, charging carts be used. Kids have them plugged in right into the wall, or they don't even have them out at all at times. So I don't know if you could talk more on that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, there's a bunch of edges to that sword because, you know, you mentioned, you know, hopefully we have them come back, the chargers that go home with the kids come back.
Right.
We actually don't want them to bring the chargers to school because there's not enough places to plug them in. We don't want a whole bunch of power strips and extension cords running all over the place. We'd rather have a fixed, okay, if a teacher has a place to charge devices in their classroom, then when those devices come in, and as you well know, you know, we don't use devices all hour, every hour of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Let's slot them in the card. They can charge because we know that, especially devices that are getting on 2, 3, 4 years old, they're not holding charge all day long. And so we want to be able to make sure that they're charged when and ready. So that's one part of that. The other is that as we look at requests that have been made on this finance agenda, for example, the language was specific on a few of these that says, and I'm just looking at this one specifically that says, cards for student devices district-wide up to a total cost of
Right.
$1.389 million. So that's two things, right? One is we're not going to go out tomorrow after the board meeting and buy $1.3 million worth of. We're going to buy them as needed, as it makes sense, as we assess the needs from a month-to-month basis throughout the rest of the school year. And at the same time, to alleviate the next finance agenda, why are we doing this again?
Yeah.
So we're trying to get up front there so that it's not as confusing.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that.
I didn't realize that said that into that, which also, so I see that we do have some specifics that say cost at or cost of, and then we have up to.
Mm-hmm. You
Right.
noticed that? I noticed.
No, I'm saying that because I would rather because I'm thinking about the aspect, but we know there's a wide range, right? And we also know that people have hawk eyes on us at the same time. And so if there's ways to be like, okay, well, we want this at this cost, and then maybe those funds are allocated towards something else. And so I know that's kind of hard to predict what these are going up to, but it's also like if you don't spend the full, then it just holds on to it.
Well, then the dollars aren't expended, and so they're still available in this case, ESSER for whatever other budget lines either may be over or our need comes up later.
But under that category,
Yeah.
though? Because if we voted for it to go under, and I'm using this as a specific,
Oh,
you know what I'm
technology.
saying? If it's specifically voted on for this, and let's say I'm looking at number 2, I'm using that as an example. No, oh yes, number 2 for other. And let's say it came in at $1 million. Well, that's $300-something thousand that's left under that, and that's what we approved it under. So what happens with that $300,000? It stays within the technology under ESSER 3.
It wouldn't necessarily, would it, stay in the technology?
Not
Budget
as far
specifically.
as the ESSER application
Yeah.
is concerned,
So
right?
just stay within the overall ESSER funding budget, but could be used by other programs. But those would come back to us, right? So we're never
Oh,
gonna.
it would.
Yeah. Anytime
Okay.
there's gonna be a purchase through ESSER, we're gonna see it on the purchasing agenda. So, right, if 300,000 wasn't used here but was then allocated elsewhere, it would come back to us for whatever that item might be.
And would we ever know that? And this is something I'm having to
Oh,
start. I need
goodness.
to know. So would
Probably
we ever
not.
know that, like, oh, he went under budget by $300,000? There's a return of now a surplus of 300 plus now back into ESSER. So when another request comes, we know what that pot is because I'm
Yeah,
seeing
no.
the holes in the cheese, and so that's what I'm like. How would we know that came back?
We
I'm
wouldn't
not sure
know.
if it's in the finite details in our year-end.
Unlikely. No. I mean,
Okay.
this is, yeah, I mean, I think
You get what I'm
there's
getting
a,
at, though.
yeah, but there's a balance, right? Like, ultimately, we know what the district's received. We are approving the purchases as they go along. So, there's not any lack of transparency, at least in my mind, about what's available, what we're spending
If it
on.
helps, the 1.38 million and the others where we've said up to, we don't anticipate we're gonna fall much short of those.
Yeah.
But we want to be able to
Quite
have the flexibility
specific.
to make it to the target if we did need to
Yeah.
go up to 100%,
Mhm.
essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do know that, especially as I think about the ESSER grant and others like it, where, let's say, $2 million is allocated for a technology line item, we say, okay, we're gonna spend 2 million on this, but we only end up spending 1.8. Well, okay, what do we do with the other 200? We've got a good fit for it, and that's something we're gonna bring back to you and say, okay, that the 200 is unlikely to go to a different line item, and Dan will step in here if I'm totally off base. It's unlikely to go to another, because we've already allocated in our ESSER application for technology, so it's just
Okay.
a matter of finding what the right target is today. Again, that's a little bit of that crystal ball and the moving target, but tack rate is, a year from now, this would be a conversation about a totally different tack, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. So there is some categorization within ESSER of what we're able to then spend the funds on, because we have applied through MDE and ultimately the federal government for approval, so. yeah,
And
I
ESSER
spoke
wouldn't
of
let
it.
us overspend.
That's right, indeed, indeed. Okay, maybe move forward to item 5 through 8? Great.
Thank you.
So, payment for Kent School Services Network 23-24 school year at a total cost of $630,000, funded by Title I, vendors Kent School Services Network.
I'm sorry, can you pause real quick? So just like we did with that one, so did we request something like from him? Because I don't want us, like, again, we're moving forward
Yeah.
with it, but then for the general thing, just like we did with the previous one, are we saying based off of what we talked about to have a little bit more details? I don't want him to like not have that
Yeah.
stuff prepared for us.
Do you feel like any of your questions were unanswered to be able to approve those?
Well, we talked about having a little bit more detail what that 70 or whatever that percentage was, and so
Oh,
you see what I'm saying?
if you need it. We were just
you
told
need it to
30%,
vote?
70%.
I would like to see that. So I would, yes, I would like to see that. No, I don't need that to vote for here. I'm still going to move us forward. I'm talking about we're going to do the same thing
That's
what we
what I'm
did earlier
clarifying.
with the.
We don't need that information to make a vote tonight, but in the future,
Yeah.
we're asking if you could have little details like
Yeah.
that when possible.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 6, Inspire literacy software licenses and student workbooks for English language students in the newcomers program to support literacy skills in the English language proficiency at a total cost of $36,483. Funding source, Section 41. Vendor, Savas Learning Company, LLC. Purchase of upgraded network distribution equipment for Burton Middle, L. Gerald R. Ford, Alger, Buchanan, Southwest L. Cesar Chavez, Harrison, MLK, Ken O'Shea, Kent Hills, and Palmer at a total cost of $249,460. Funded 85% E-rate. Vendors People Driven Technology. Purchase student desks and chairs. Replacement, assembly, removal, and installation at a total cost of $3,561,291. ESSER 3 funded. Vendor is Interphase.
Okay, we'll pause there for a moment. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I do have a, can you give any clarification on item number 8 on the 3.5 million on the purchase of student desk replacement, assembly, removal?
Mr. Smart, would that be something you'd have?
Are you talking about like where? Because it's.
I'm talking about, because, so I know that we have received, we received a pretty big donation, right, of furniture. I'm not sure if that is applicable. It wasn't student furniture.
Correct.
Okay, so is this 3.5 million, are we just, how much is that covering in terms of replacement, removal of, and where's that focus in?
Okay, so we actually did a survey at all of the schools and are looking at the enrollment. We're looking at all the classrooms that will be affected in each individual school, and that's what we're replacing. We're not replacing every single classroom, we're just replacing the number of student furniture that is equivalent to the number of students we have
Okay,
throughout the district.
so, Oh, I was just gonna say, so out of the 3.5 million, what do you anticipate being purchased? I don't know if you have those numbers at all versus, assembly, removal, installation. I understand those costs, but uh, about how?
I don't have
You don't
that
have
for
those
you right
numbers?
now, no.
Okay, okay,
We're actually right now in the process of working with the vendor.
okay.
So I will work with Ms. Cripps and try to get that for
Yeah,
you.
thank you. I'd appreciate that. Just to, because it encompasses so much. In my mind, I would just like some clarification as to, okay, how much money is going towards simply just the purchase of things. I understand that, it all kind of comes together, right? Have to put it together, have to remove the old furniture. Well, so it says removal, but are we removing things or are we just,
Yes.
we are removing some
Yes.
old furniture? Okay, okay. Yeah, just some clarification. If you have the time, I know you're a busy guy. Thank you.
No. We'll get that.
So I have a separate question outside of the financial crisis. Can you provide us with, and not now because I'm still gonna move that forward, but I would like to know like where. I know you're saying district-wide, but
And
when we're
the
talking
list of
about,
schools.
yeah, like what, especially for quadrant-wise, we already know. Like I just want to make sure that's equitable in that regards. Like what schools are receiving these upgrades? I think that's something to brag about that equipment, especially with the efforts that's been going over the summer for renovations. I think that will be a good public show of where those furnishings and furnishes we're going to be going to.
Perfect. We'll do that.
Thank you.
You also said it was based off of request too, right?
Mm,
So is there any
no, I think he was saying like it was, they did an assessment.
An assessment.
assessment?
Yeah,
Okay, sorry, I
yes.
thought you said a survey.
Yes, no. we
Sorry,
did an
Mrs. Smart, I
assessment.
didn't answer your question for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smart. All right, we'll move forward to support materials and services.
We're looking to increase services to digitalize historical student records as the project scope has expanded for student records at a cost of $183,956. The original amount of $213,350 was approved in June. New cost would be $397,306, funded by ESSER 3 through Vital Records Control.
So that's the only one I actually wrote a question down for, was can we have what was the scope that approved? I remember us approving this, but since the scope has now changed, what is that scope that's changed that's causing this to be almost a $200,000 increase?
Yep, so originally we asked for 213 and that only included, I'm sorry, good evening
Hi,
everybody.
hello.
And that only included the hard files. So what we have in our records room are all files for schools that have closed prior to 1996. And so what 213 covered were the hard files, which includes student actual like CA60s with report cards, pictures, those things. The additional ask is for our microfilm and our microfiche. We didn't include that in the first ask. And it also includes a year-long subscription and license to access the data.
And what is that yearly cost?
So it's about $8,200 per year for 9 licenses, which our staff and student services would have a license. So they were able to bill us up front for a year. So we included that in our ask as well.
Does this digitize everything in the district, or do we still have more work?
Oh.
Okay.
So this
Shoot.
is just closed programs previous
Okay.
to 1996. So Creston,
Oh, wow.
Southeast Academic Center, Adelante, those schools. Every high school has its own records room. So if you graduate
Yeah.
from Ottawa, your records are still at Ottawa. City, your records are still at City.
I
So
see.
this is just closed programs
Okay,
that are in that records room.
all right.
Oh,
There you
so,
go.
so
Oh, yeah.
So
We're not
you'll
done.
be, so wait a minute. So there'll be an anticipation of additional, because I know we talked
Over
about the
time, right?
digitizing. I think you talked about that previously,
I don't
about digitizing our future records. And so this is just about the historical ones, are you saying? So each year, as another year advances, another year is added on, so then you move up to like 98?
Nope. So
How does that work?
Yep. So in 1996, for those of you who were around, we used to use TR, which was like a beta system that was built by one person's brain. But then when we switched over to Synergy, we transferred some of those records from 1996 to when we got Synergy, I forget what year, they transferred those over into Synergy. So we can access those right now, but it's pre-1996 that are still
Yeah,
paper
hard
files.
copy.
And we're talking
Okay,
about, you remember we used to get our report cards in triplicate paper, like carbon paper?
Yeah.
So they're wearing gloves because some of the paper's so fragile.
Yes.
They're taking out staples. They're looking at every image and making it lighter if they can to make it more readable. I mean, it's a lot of
So
Yeah.
did it just stop
Labor
at
intensive.
96? Like, I don't understand. Like, why is 97 and 8 and 99 not a problem, I guess?
I don't know.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
96, I was only, I wasn't here. But I think it has something to do with records being digital, right? 1996,
So
still
maybe
the
it was just
age of computers. So those records are NTR. We were able to switch them from
Okay.
TR. The records pre-1996 were not in
there you go.
TR. They're all paper. So they didn't scan anything into TR.
got
They
it.
just
So that
kept
was just
paper
a year of change. So now everything in TR is in Synergy, our existing software. Is that what I heard?
from 1996 forward.
Yeah, got it.
Yes.
Okay.
97 for it.
Nice. Yeah. Yes. Whatever the break was.
96
Yeah.
96 forward.
That's where.
Yes,
Um,
96 forward. Anything prior to 1996
Yeah, it's fascinating.
from a closed program is in what we
That's
call
what we're working on. Okay.
good.
So you mentioned the 8,200 per year, or how much is it?
8,200.
8,200. Is that something that we will just continue to pay year after year, or are we going to create our own database for the? No,
No.
no.
Correct. I don't think we have the capacity.
To build a bigger data center. Yeah.
Okay.
to
Can't put
create
it on like a 5 terabyte hard drive and call it good. Okay. No. All right. So someone's got it. So someone's got someone's got to take care of our data.
It's millions and
Okay.
millions of pieces of.
But it's
Yeah.
the safe storage of the data,
Yeah.
right? It's to making sure that people can't encrypt those files. I mean, we have that huge federal one in the old, is that the pyramid building?
Oh, yeah.
Then that's now a whole data
Yeah,
system,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you
yeah.
can think about the cooling aspects of keeping the filtration. IT, like, I like it. So like it kind of messes with my brain, but it's crazy all that stuff. So this
Yes.
is very interesting.
And so this company will house those records for us
Securely.
securely, for sure, on site at their company in Ohio, but also in the cloud that is encrypted that we can
Right.
access.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Last two items under building and sites.
Yes, thank you. We're looking to reallocate a portion of $60,000 approved in September from Hazar Bestos Corporation, a GFL Environmental USA company, and allocating $27,000 to Micro Air Consulting for added asbestos remediation and abatement. Looking to replace fire alarm systems at GRPS University due to the fire alarm system's age, reliability, and replacement part availability at a total cost of $109,866. Vendors are Riverside Integrated Systems.
I recall that being a necessary if we talk about what happened at my portion of me seeing, what we talked about that the retreat is potentially having that being a housing as we transition buildings. So that might be I know that's going to be a necessary need to make sure that that's updated to keep our scholars safe. My question for number one is the micro air consulting
Mr.
one.
Smart.
Alex, when it says the $60,000 in a portion not being allocated, we budgeted $60,000 with intentionality, right? And so is there going to be a future request to replace that $27,000 to go towards what this originally was requested to go towards?
The good news is that the project is pretty much done. We are right now painting and cleaning, so we are not anticipating any need to do any additional asbestos abatement beyond where we are today. This added work was necessary because late in the summer, actually at the beginning of the school year, I should clarify, we had some very, very hot, humid days. And when the workers came to work on Monday, they have found some of the plaster had fallen down. So we asked the contractor to do additional investigation, go through the entire building, make sure that everything was secured, and if anything was loose, to remove it. So that was a driving force for that additional cost.
But this isn't an additional cost. This is a reallocation of what's
Both
already
and.
been approved.
Correct, but is reallocation to pay these contractors.
Reallocation 60,000, new allocation 27, if I'm reading it correctly.
Reallocation, a portion of that 60. So did you change vendors partway through? Is that what happened?
No.
Oh,
So so let me ask this in a different way, because it's not being answered for me. We approved the $60,000. We didn't use all $60,000, which based off of what you said, we got those things done. So the remaining left over of that $60,000 is $27,000 that we're now reallocating towards a different project. Is that correct? Am I looking at that in the right way?
Out of the 60,000, we're only asking for 27. So there's still money left.
okay. I misunderstood.
You
Yep,
see
thank
what I'm saying? So that's,
Yep.
so,
So it's
so we're still
within what's
within our
already-
budget and what
Yes.
you asked for.
Yeah,
But that
Beautiful.
other project came under, which caused us to have extra funds for us to reallocate towards what you're asking for, correct?
correct.
Okay.
Got it.
Correct.
That's what I
Thank
thought you. No,
That's
you're
helpful.
fine. That's we're a team. That's why I wanted to make sure I was comprehending what you were actually saying. And so that's it's a good thing that we came under budget. So I'm happy that this is coming forth. Oh, yeah, I'll leave that alone. I have a different comment, but I'll leave that alone. So this is good. So I don't know if I want to ask that question right now. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Okay.
All right, we made it through the purchasing agenda. We are going to get clarification on the mixed staffing and recruiting line item under support materials and services, as well as some more detail around technology spend and kind of percentage of way through, I guess, our technology, our many facets of technology. And we'll get that within the next week so that we're ready to move this forward at the board meeting on Monday. Okay. I missed one. Which one is that?
And the one that around interface
thank you,
number
furniture.
8
Mhm.
under other
Yeah.
The
special.
classrooms.
Yeah, thank you very much.
The schools.
Yep.
What schools were
Perfect.
doing that.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to move this purchasing agenda forward to the board meeting.
Second.
Can I have a motion first?
So moved.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So
I know.
moved.
I said motion, it's confusing. All right, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. We'll take your second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.
Clearly.
think
I
that's
heard something completely different. That is hilarious. Thank
So I'll
you.
give the
All
update on
right,
that.
all right, we'll move forward to our 2 donations this evening. All right, Mr. Moore, back to you.
Okay, thank you. The first one is Gerald R. Ford International Airport Authority fundraiser. They held its annual golf outing on Friday, August 25th of this year, and would like to bestow the funds raised to Grand Rapids Public Schools, department or program in need. Check in the amount of $5,000 will be awarded to the district and superintendent. Dr. Roby has designated the athletic department as the recipient. And the donation will be applied to middle school physicals and Ottawa athletic equipment.
It's great. We did hear from Ms. Krebs at the last Finance Committee meeting that we knew we'd be receiving a donation. We didn't know how much, as often is the case at a golf outing, and so now this is coming to us with the amount.
When it says Ottawa athletic equipment, is that in addition to the donation from what's that
Yeah.
workout people?
Right. Planet Fitness,
Thank
yeah. I
you.
don't think it's weight room equipment specifically. I think it's probably other athletic
Okay.
equipment
And they
needs.
did get the Lions $20,000.
Oh,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so great.
What-
So great.
Can we put like, and I know I have not seen. We have to start highlighting our wins and stuff that we're doing like that. That needs to be
It's on their social media, their website, everything.
the actual Planet Fitness one. I didn't see the Lions one.
The Lions one was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they won on Sunday. Go Lions.
I did hear that. That's great.
That's all I got to say.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? All right. May I have a motion, please, to move this forward to the board meeting? So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next donation, please.
The second donation is Ottawa Hills High School Scholars Music Scholarship. Mrs. Judy Van Doggen represents the estate of Ottawa Hills High School alumni, Mr. Jim Haven, passed away January 29th of 2021. On behalf of Mr. Haven, a music scholarship in the amount of $20,000 has been set up to financially support talented scholars in the music program at OHHS.
I love that.
Currently identified a junior trumpet player at OHHS as the first recipient. Looking to do a Michigan Ambassadors of Music tour in Europe.
Incredible.
Is that going to cost the whole $20,000?
No, I don't believe so. When I talked to Ms. Cribbs about it, no, I think there will be additional funds. Yes.
Like, oh, I don't want to
Left
put that on
over.
one student. That's a,
He does receive the full 20,000, or they receive the full 20,000?
Ottawa Hills will receive the full 20,000 for their music program, and then that can be
Oh.
designated to scholar musicians moving forward.
Okay,
And so this is one way
So
they're
this is
using
just
those
one of
funds.
them.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
that's
Yep.
amazing.
It's
I know we
amazing.
talked about Ms. Gribbs providing us, and I thought maybe you brought it up, Kim, of us doing thank yous to people that donate us, that we can sign, because I think people donating to the district and getting a thank you from us is, like, they could have done anything else, but I would love for you to,
I think
if you could remind her about that, so we can sign something to say thank you for your contribution to our scholars. That would be nice.
I also think it would be amazing if when he gets back, we had like a
Yeah, indeed.
board
Yeah, we could hear
update
about
of
that.
his trip.
Yeah,
An acknowledgement.
That's pretty
that's
amazing.
right. Hear from that scholar. Absolutely. Okay, great. Well, should we be so fortunate that Mrs. Judy Van Dongen is listening to this Finance Committee meeting, let her know that we are really grateful for this donation.
For listening.
All right, may I have a motion to move this forward to the board, please?
Motion.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, doing great. All right, August 2023 financial statements.
See, the main thing to know on these, I believe Ms. Cribbs usually just says everything's.
Everything's reporting as it should? Yeah, I was waiting for the famous line.
But I'll add, just down at the bottom, it points out that we are wrapping up our annual audit right now. So the information, while we don't expect any material changes, statements are to the auditors right now under review. So we're hoping that the numbers that have been presented as the beginning balances won't change, but have to do the little disclaimer that they are subject to
course.
change.
Yep.
The other just big things to note was that the majority of the property taxes come in these first couple months. So you'll see the
Big
money gets
influx.
spent down over the
Yes.
rest of the fiscal year because of the large influx from that particular funding source. Grants will be adjusted with Amendment 1 as
Yep.
no more information. And we had it's showing up as a negative under federal sources, under restricted. It has to do with a previous fiscal year journal entry that gets reversed and the funding hasn't come in yet. So it's just
Yep.
cleaning up a prior fiscal year item that will zero out as the money comes in. It just got recorded a lot sooner this year, so it wasn't a direct offset, but it will be.
All
Are there any
right.
specific pages that I needed to pull up, or, okay,
No,
great.
unless there's any specific questions. Okay. All right, very good. Well, then we'll move on to our last item here, which is our bond construction update. Welcome back for the third time, Mr. Smart.
I like the smile that he has on his face already. So it's like,
That's good.
I'm ready for some good news.
So we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh,
We
good.
really are. Let me start with GR Montessori. The updated substantial completion date is October 16th, so it's just around the corner. The work has been pretty much focusing around the gymnasium and the library. And as of today, we started carpeting the library. We're expecting that part of the work to be done by the end of the week. And we should have access to the library by next week, by the end of next week. So we can begin to set up the spaces. The gym will be given back to us on Monday. So, and after the 16th, we'll just be working on some punch list items until it's done. So we're pretty excited about this portion of the project. Central High School, Innovation Central, the work on the third and the fourth floor continues. You know, the roughing for all the necessary HVAC work. We are beginning to see progress in the auditorium wall. If you go by, you'll see the new steel is mostly in place. We're still finishing some few things. And we're expecting the exterior panels to arrive on Monday the 2nd, October 2. We will be installing that throughout the month, and we expect the completion of that portion of the work by the end of October. We have, Mr. Eatman, we have brick. We have
lovely.
a whole pile of them
Great.
back in my office warehouse
Oh, I was
area.
gonna say your office.
So the office building, the warehouse. So we'll have to talk about what we're gonna do to make those available for alumni and whoever wants them. So what's next in the auditorium after the panels are going is we have to do some work inside the auditorium. So we're gonna be building some scaffolding in there to complete the painting and fire suppression. It's pretty steep. The floor there is very, very steep. So it has been an interesting process to find the right scaffolding for us to do that work.
And the lighting too, right? Didn't you talked about lighting being updated in there as well? In that same auditorium?
Not in,
Not on this
No,
on this
Union.
space.
One of the
Yeah,
other
Union
auditoriums,
is
yeah.
lighting. Yeah, Union Auditorium.
Yeah.
Central is fire suppression and painting. So this work, the fire suppression scope is to start towards the end of October. Right now, October 23rd is the date, but that can move. And the substantial, once we are done with the painting and the fire suppression, we're gonna do the carpet, and we're going to rebuild the stage floor because we had to remove that for this work. And we should have substantial completion January 4.
There's a light.
I do have one question for you. As you know that we had, and you've experienced this yourself as well, students, scholars, teachers, wanting to have updated information. So I love the fact that you were able to provide us with a timeline now. I'm just curious about how are they going to be communicated about these updates so that way they can plan, anticipate, or whatever the case may be.
So we have now a, what are we calling it?
I know about the dashboard.
Dashboard.
But but we know about it because of us being at some of the meetings where they announce it. But people might, or families in particular, might not even know how to even access that. So is there like a traditional old school waiver? And I'm saying old school as if getting a letter is old school nowadays. It's not old school getting a letter information, but just overall not relying just on that dashboard to be there, but like how are we? Because they got informed by other means and not the dashboard when we had to at the start of the year.
Yes, because we did not have the dashboard. That was not up and running. Now it is, and we are updating all projects, not only this ones, but all the projects are being updated on that dashboard, so that information is already available. In fact, I just got a note today from Luke and Leon that we have to provide an update this
great.
week.
Good.
So this information that I share with you today will be in the dashboard by the end of the week.
So is it safe to assume, I'm going to ask this in a different way. So whenever you're introduced to something new, right, it takes rather word of mouth or practice for people to get used to a new system of communication. And I don't want us to just rely on that dashboard without at least driving people or communicating that it's being updated there to drive people. So this question is striving for how are we informing people that's impacted by Montessori or by Innovation Central, that is where they're going to find the updates to be informed. How are they being informed to go there for your updates?
Yes, I believe that our communications office has already sent the information to parents, letting them know where the dashboard is. However, I will follow with Leon and Mr. Hendricks, make sure that I'll share your concern so that way we can let them know whether it's in an email or a letter that we sent home, where the dashboard is and how they can get to it.
If we can avoid a trip, right? And we talked about this at the last week's meeting. If we can avoid some form of a trip, I'd rather us be proactive and get ahead of that than responding to people being upset about not being informed. So this is an easy win, in my personal opinion, so I'd rather take it.
Yes.
But if we can, I appreciate you getting that update.
I will work with Mr. Hendricks on that, make sure that that is, and I know this is not a bond update, but we have a community event on Thursday for Kensington.
Wonderful. Yep.
So,
I received the postcard in the mail. It's great. Yeah, thank you. Mhm.
I don't receive anything in the mail, I
Oh,
guess.
no.
No. I'll try to be there then.
That's great.
so.
Can we get break?
Yeah, that's my reason, because I don't have a towel.
But hey, you know, maybe.
If, when you see the building, you're gonna want, not brick, but some of the beautiful architectural motifs that the building has.
Gorgeous indeed. Yeah.
Thanks.
So,
Guess
um,
that-
so that is my report.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that concludes our agenda. So we will adjourn this Finance Committee meeting. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Good to be
Thanks
with
for
you.
your time.
Yes, appreciate
for your
you
patience.
stepping in.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.